Do you have some old hand planes laying around that the tote and knob maybe look a little worse for wear? I'm going to show you my quick and simple method to revitalize the look of these wooden parts. Keep your hand plane working for a lot more years to come. I'm Jeff, and you're watching Home Built Workshop. Welcome to this episode of Home Built Workshop. I hope your day is going amazing. We've got a fun little project on the bench today. I recently picked up a couple new hand planes to add to the collection. One of them is this number 3 Stanley and a number 6, which is up here behind me. Our focus today is going to be on this number 3. Now, I don't require a whole lot of my hand planes. I like them in mostly their original condition. I like kind of that older patina. As long as they're not all rusty and crusty, I need the bottoms to be flat, and I like the wooden bits to look pretty good. Now, this one in particular checks all of those boxes. However, the previous owner, or somebody along the line, has got some paint on here. There's some little bits of red paint here, and then this big ugly, I don't know, mint green. Was that something from the 70s maybe? 60s? I'm not really sure. But that just bothers me, so we need to take care of that. I want to do a very light restoration on the knob and the tote on this hand plane before adding it to the rack. The first thing I need to do is just a little quick disassembly to get these pieces removed from the plane body. As I'm doing a quick visual inspection before we get to work on this tote, I don't see really any cracks or anything yet. Hopefully we don't find anything too ugly underneath this green paint, but initial inspection looks pretty good. Let's proceed. Now, I suppose we could just grab some sandpaper and start sanding all this finish off, but that doesn't sound like fun. Now, one cool method that I saw, I think it was in a Paul Sellers video, was to use the edge of a chisel, kind of like a card scraper, and just scrape all that finish off. So that's what we're gonna do. To scrape this old crusty finish off, we're not actually using the sharpened chisel portion, we're using the corner of the side of the blade. If you've never used a chisel like this, it really does work very well. You just have to be mindful of where the sharpened edge is. You don't want to accidentally somehow run it into your hand or something like that, so just be careful when you're working around that sharp edge. Got red back here, green up front. Now I can start to see the color of the wood in there. It's gonna be cool. I found out that you do have quite a bit of control in the curved areas if you use it kind of like you would if you were whittling on a stick. Once we've scraped off as much of that old finish as we can, then it's time to grab some sandpaper and just get everything cleaned up. I think I'm going to sand mine up to about 320 grit. You probably don't need to go that high, but I want this to feel nice in the hand. As you're sanding, you kind of get to decide how far you want to go. I would like this to retain a little bit of its past, so I'm not going to sand every little dent and nick down. In fact, there's a little bit of green paint here that's in a couple of deep dents. I'm not going to sand that out because that green paint is part of the history of this tool, and I like to keep some of that on there. I just don't want the whole thing to be covered in green paint. I hope that makes sense. Ultimately, you get to decide how far you want to take the sanding when you're restoring a tool like this. I'm going to stop right here. A few little light dents are still there, but overall, it's a lot cleaner, and we're ready to move on. With most of that crusty old finish removed, now we need to reapply something else. Now, I believe that from the factory when these were produced, I think there was some sort of a varnish on there. Instead of varnish, I'm going to use this concoction here, which is mostly boiled linseed oil. I did add a little bit of mineral spirits just to thin it a little, but really if you just have boiled linseed oil, that would work just fine too. And as you can tell, I'm not doing anything fancy here. Just dunking the tote straight into my container of finish. If you're working on a project like this, you can absolutely use whatever finish you want. I just like the feel of wood that has just an oil finish applied, but if you'd rather go for a varnish or a lacquer of some sort, by all means, use the finish that you want to use. This is just what I prefer to do. Once the tote's had a good dunk in the linseed oil, I'll just wipe off the excess and wait for that oil to dry. With some oil reapplied, now I can really see some remnants of that green paint. Actually, there's more on there than I thought was left. But I'm okay with that. Once the linseed oil is dried, I'm just going to apply a coat of regular old paste wax. Side note on the paste wax, have any of you heard that they no longer make this Johnson's paste wax? I can't find it anywhere, and it seems though I read somewhere online that they don't do this anymore. That's a drag. If you guys heard that, let me know down in the comments. Keep in mind that I'm not looking to do a full restoration of this plane, and if that's what you're looking for, there's lots of videos online that show that process. I've even got one myself, a complete restoration of an old Stanley No. 4. I'll put a link down below in the description as well if you want to check that out. I even had to make a brand new tote for mine. That plane's still working good to this day. After letting that paste wax dry, we'll just buff it up a little bit, remove the excess. It'll bring out a little bit of shine. And then this thing will be ready to put back on. Maybe the last can of Johnson's paste wax that I'll ever get. Now our wooden parts are ready to be reinstalled on the plane. I did take some steel wool to these little brass nuts here just to clean them up a little bit, and also the exact same process that I used to clean up the tote, I also used to clean up the knob as well. And I think overall that looks pretty cool. And that's literally all that I'm going to do to this hand plane. It's ready to be put to work. I've already sharpened the blade. I'm not going to clean up anything else. I really like to try to retain that patina. I'm not one that wants to have everything polished. Although they look super nice, I just like to keep the years of use left on the tool. And that's exactly why I didn't clean up every little speck of green paint that was on the handle. The majority of it's gone, but there are still some remnants. And to me, that just shows some of the history that this tool's had. I can't wait to get this thing put to work. I'm sure it'll appear in some upcoming projects. Again, if you're looking for more of a restoration type video, check the link in the description. I've got one down there. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.